Welcome everyone to Zero Calorie Marketing. So today we have Nick Telson Sillett, a man who needs no introductions, but I'm going to do an intro for you anyway. He is a London-based entrepreneur, angel investor, podcaster, startup mentor, public speaker. He is currently the co-founder of a number of businesses, including a company called Trumpet, which we are very, very keen to understand and find out more about. He's also the co-founder of an angel investing venture firm called Horseplay Ventures. He previously co-founded DesignMyNight, which exited to the Access Group in 2017. So firstly, Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. The first question is really, what is Trumpet and what gets you excited about growing the company?
So Trumpet is in the sort of digital sales room space. So it's a brand new sort of wave of sales operations, which is called buyer enablement. And basically it allows sales teams to create digital sales rooms in seconds, personalized to their buyer. And that can be the carrier of all the content, use cases, proposals, pricing, all in one digital link rather than hundreds of emails back and forth. And yeah, I think when we sold, I say we, it's my co-founder from DesignMyNight, Andrew, when we sold DesignMyNight, and we obviously are in the luxury position of not necessarily having to work. So you sort of question yourself, well, I'm still young, like, what's my purpose? What is going to drive me? And I think we both agree that we just love building startups. Like getting from 0 to 1 is something we genuinely are super passionate about. So yeah, that's sort of our mission, is to keep building these 0 to 1 companies.
I was actually checking out Trumpet this morning, and it's super. I do the sales for the company, and it's super cool the way you can actually drag and drop images, even voice notes. I think that was a tool that I actually genuinely thought, oh, this is really interesting. And also you can put contracts and PDFs. So, but I think the sales copy or the tagline you have is close deals 40% faster. So yeah, I'm actually going to use it for my business.
Good.
So,
it genuinely works. And there's actually, brilliantly for us, there was a Gartner report out recently that said by 2025, so not that long, 80% of all sales interactions will be done in a digital space.
Yeah.
So these digital sales rooms are going to be a thing in the next 4 or 5 years, and we're early. So we're just sort of getting all the companies that are early adopters into this new wave at the moment.
And you've got some big clients signed up already, which I saw. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's running a startup, you know how hard it is to get the first few logos in. And yeah, it looked very impressive. So thank you for that. Over to you.
Over to me. Good to be back, Suds. Well, as we know, you've been involved in various startups and ventures, one of those being DesignMyNight. What have been some of the biggest learning curves or lessons you've learned over that journey of from start to sort of finish to selling? And
a ton. Quite difficult to put your finger on exactly what you learn. But for us, I think team is number one. So DesignMyNight, when we sold, we had about 100 people. And we had that early core team that we hired, that were actually quite junior at the time, but were so bought into what we were doing. Like an extended part of the founder team almost. And they stayed with us, pretty much all of them, till the end. And they were managers by the time we exited. Having that sort of, I call it like our ring around us as founders of ears on the ground, people that love what you're doing, that when you're 100 people as a founder, you can't be close to everyone, but they are there close to everyone. So that's something we really try and take to all of our future startups, is those sort of first 5 to 10 hires have to be not just a professional fit, but a culture fit.
amazing.
Actually, one thing I forgot to mention is Sabs is back in season 4 after being away for 5 years somewhere else. But yeah, welcome back to Zero Calorie Marketing. We hope we will be co-hosting with us a few more episodes.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure, yeah.
So interestingly, most founders significantly underinvest in brand, whereas you take it seriously. Most VC investors will tell founders it's a waste of money in the early stages. Why do you take the opposite view?
I mean, I'm a brand person. So before I started Design My Night, I was at L'Oreal for 5 years doing marketing. So, L'Oreal it's a beauty company, but it's essentially a marketing company. So learned a lot there, loved it. Your brand is how people perceive you. And I think when we're saying getting early logos, I think if you look professional, you look bigger than you are, you have a tone of voice that people can relate to. And nowadays you don't have to go necessarily to a branding agency and spend 50 grand. There's freelancers, there's tools out there where you can create a nice looking brand for not a lot of money to start with. So for us, and for me, brand is the projection of your company from day one. So as an investor, when I see decks, for example, and the deck looks terrible and the brand looks terrible, that's like an instant negative for me. So I got to practice what I preach. Interestingly with Trumpet as well, it's B2B SaaS sales. So it's not the sexiest of industries. And what we did, we had a look, and most tools in that space are light blue and white. They speak quite jargony. So what we wanted to do with Trumpet, as the name suggests, like loud, get out there, make some noise, is we call it internally a B2B brand with a B2C flair. So our language, our tone of voice, our branding has quite a B2C element to it. And we talk directly to our users, salespeople, like they are just normal people, not just salespeople. And I think that has really resonated with everyone.
Cool. I think we should definitely explore that in more detail. The other question is, in terms of, you obviously are quite switched on in terms of, I guess because of your work, but also you see lots of different B2B SaaS companies. Are there any cool marketing campaigns that you've seen other B2B SaaS companies do? And if you could name a few that first come to mind, what would they be?
I mean, interestingly, I think it's pretty stark in the B2B world. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head now, any that I've seen. None are immediately obvious to me. I quite like, so Gong is in the sales space. They have a similar ethic to Trumpet. Well, and they're an instrument as well, a loud instrument. Again,
a brass instrument, I think, right?
Yeah, and they are colourful and loud. And I think what the best B2B SaaS companies are doing from a marketing point of view is using the data they've gathered to then give sort of actionable insights to people. So Gong are excellent at that, where they're being able to track thousands, hundreds of thousands of sales conversations, and they can just put out, one graphic, which is like, if you use this word more, you are 5% more likely to get a deal closed based on data, and stuff like that's really powerful. So you're not just throwing out testimonials, which we know, is all manufactured anyway. Actionable insights from a B2B point of view that people actively want to share and engage with, I think is the most powerful.
Cool.
Yeah, really interesting. And in your opinion, what is the lowest hanging fruit in B2B SaaS marketing for customer acquisition?
So something we focus on a lot at Design My Night from a B2C point of view is SEO. So when we sold Design My Night, we were getting about 8 million uniques a month, and about 65% of that was organic Google. And from day one, we focused on SEO. The beauty of SEO is I think people overcomplicate it. Like, the rules to nail SEO actually isn't that complicated. You just need to put the time and effort in to do it and write good, relevant content. And I don't think a lot of B2B players are thinking like that. So for Design My Night, it was tougher because you had time out, etc. So actually what we did at Design My Night was go after low-hanging fruit within SEO. So for example, we went after keywords like basement bars in Shoreditch, rooftop bars in the West End. So quite long-tail keywords, but we're still getting quite a lot of searches, and we were able to get number one much quicker than going after nights out in London. And then after a year or two, we were ranking number one for a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and Google was obviously ranking us higher as a website. So then we could go after the bigger keywords. And now we're doing the same in in the B2B SaaS market. I think the masters are HubSpot. So, you know, their blog, I think they attribute to the vast majority of their funnel. So we take a lot of inspiration from them.
Amazing.
I personally use DesignMyNight a lot. So, you know, I think the last few bookings we made has been through that. So it's super useful. And I think from, I guess, when it was acquired by the Access Group, you know, the utility of it still remains. So, you know, it's been, and when I actually first saw that you had co-founded DesignMyNight, I was like, okay, I got to speak to you. So that was not just because, you know, I may ask you for a discount at some point, or
I can't get you that anymore.
some sort of access code or whatever, but it's because it's super useful and it's still going. And, you know, a lot of startup companies that we speak to, they get acquired and then they get closed down or get sucked into something else, which doesn't resemble what they had created. Which leads me to the next question, actually. And this came in from a friend of yours, or a mutual contact of ours. And this is a two-parter. Okay. What's a more valuable skill now in a world of advancing technology? Being able to market the product you sell, or being able to market yourself? And following that, how do you market yourself? Sell us the Nick Telson brand.
I think to get from 0 to 1, marketing yourself is a very good starting point. You know, personal brand is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but I actually made a conscious effort when I exited DesignMyNight to start working on my personal brand. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I would build more startups. So in my head, I was like, well, if I start to build a bit of a following, that will help me when I launched future startups. And it doesn't cost you anything but time. So I sort of put my eggs in the LinkedIn basket as the social media. And, you know, when we launched the wait list, for example, for Trumpet, we had like 3,000 or 4,000 people on the wait list. Yeah. And I think 80% of that came from LinkedIn, because I built up the following. People trusted what I said. I said, I'm building something new now, teasing it out, get on the wait list. You know, if you're a follower of mine, you'll get special access, all of that. And it doesn't cost anything. And I don't think you need necessarily any skills to be able to do that. Marketing your brand, as you will all know, is a special skill, and not everyone can do it, and you might need external help. But marketing yourself is relatively easy to do if you focus on what information you have to put out into the world, and do it in a very authentic and consistent way. I think that's the important thing with personal brand. So yeah, I would say marketing yourself. And the tips are, authenticity. You know, I can see when a personal branding agency is running someone's social. Yeah. You know, there's a staged picture. It's a bit like quotey. How I run my LinkedIn is I will literally wake up that morning and think, oh, what can I write about? And tap it out and post it. There'll be spelling mistakes sometimes. There'll be grammar mistakes. Great, because like that shows that I'm doing it. And I think that's what you need. You want a connection with someone if you follow their personal brand. And as with any social media, consistency. When you start, you'll get no engagement, and you just got to keep going. Same with podcasting. You just got to keep going. And you'll get to a tipping point if the content you're putting out is good.
Good. And going back to the last question, you know, sell us Nick Telson, the brand.
I think I just, so look, I talk about founder stuff, from 0 to exit. Angel investing stuff. I talk about what I know. What I always say to myself when I put something out on social is there at least one tip from what I'm putting out that someone can take? You know, what I don't do is just put out an inspirational quote. That doesn't help anyone. I try and put out an actionable tip. So on my podcast, on my social media, I'm always thinking, okay, is there at least one thing that someone reading this can take from it? And no BS. Like, social media is just full of BS. People that haven't done it talking like they have done it. You know, and the other social medias are all about this film across your life anyway. So yeah, I just try and give like honest, raw, no BS assumptions.
That's impactful, and I think that helps you build relationships as well.
And these are the kind of tips anyone can kind of apply to their LinkedIn presence.
And that when I speak to founders who ask about personal branding and stuff, and they're like, well, you've exited, so it's easier, which is 100% true. But then I say to like other founders who are starting, I'm like, we'll talk about your starting journey. Be raw, be honest, be open, show how difficult it is. You don't have to have had a success. You know, we're such a celebrity culture that we think only celebrities have interesting things to say. They've probably got the least interesting things to say. So whatever experience you've got in your life, you will find a tribe that are interested in that. So as long as you're honest and authentic and are consistent, you'll get people that want to join your tribe.
Yeah, your niche will form organically. Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier about, you know, the importance of having your brand set up and having those big names on your, you know, your website. How do you form those relationships with other organizations? How do you get those initial names? How do you interact with them when you're sort of at an early stage?
Yeah, it's just tough. I think, look, when there's a big startup mantra from a book called The Lean Startup, which most founders would have read, which is a great book. I've read it. But the philosophy there is actually like, just get your product out into the world, even if it's not great. I sort of follow a slightly different ethos where I'm a bit more precious about what I put out to the world. And I think that weighs true with bigger logos. You know, so when they see your product, it has to look professional, intuitive, modern, and just be solving a problem. So, you know, for example, when our investors were investing in Trumpet and they saw the product, they said to us, like, this looks like a Series B product, not a pre-seed product. And that was because we maybe spent an extra 3 or 4 months polishing it, where other people would have just put this thing out into the world. So for example, one of our customers, Sky, you know, when their VP of sales just saw the tool, he was like, this is great. It looks great. The way you're thinking is how I want to take the company forward. So in a forward thinking way. And look, you're obviously going to get the questions like how reputable are you? Are you going to be here in a year if we throw everything into training our team up on your tool, and you have to persuade them you are? We're VC backed. So that's in our favor as well. So it's like, well, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. And look, as with any sales, it's about building relationships. So, you know, we built a relationship with that person. We didn't just come in and sell. It was more consultative. It was like, look, we've got a lot of experience in sales as well. This is where the world's going. Let's sort of help you do that. So if you go more consultative rather than just selling your product, I think you can build a much closer relationship with bigger players as well.
Am I right in thinking the Sky deal actually came in almost like from like a left field angle?
It was an introduction to someone. It was a warm introduction to someone. I think someone in my network that knew someone that worked at Sky, who very kindly then took the call because it was an introduction, and then he loved what we were doing. He was like, okay, I know which team to send this to. So again, network, leveraging personal brand, which is where that introduction came from, is also vital.
Perfect. I mean, anyone, you know, with our company, we work with some big companies, but also some tiny companies as well. And the amount of word of mouth that goes into securing a deal, you know, we worked with Eurovision last year, and this is a company that we would personally pay to work with.
Yeah.
But they came in because I did something, you know, we did a piece of work for someone 5 years ago, and they had kept me in mind, and they went from one role to another. And it was just like, you know, like I picked up the phone and I said, yes, we'll work with you. And then I called my mum and I said, hey, we're going to work with Eurovision. You finally know and understand the company that we're working for. And she was like, yeah, that's when I knew I made it.
Is she a Eurovision fan then?
She understands, you know, like if I say to her I work with Digital or another, you know, or any other SaaS company, it's like, okay, great. Oh, well done, son. Well done. You know, so, and when I said Eurovision, and she's like, oh, wow. So
that's big. This is big.
She actually understood that, finally understood the company I work with. So that, you know, that was, and I guess, you know, a lot of B2B marketers or marketers think, the person who is a B2B marketer doesn't suddenly somehow become, you know, a non-human being just because they work in B2B marketing. They'll understand the logos, and they'll kind of, I guess, you know, like when you mentioned creating a taking a B2C approach to B2B marketing, these are human beings that you're talking to, and they will like the aesthetics, or they'll like nice designs.
Yeah, it's the same psychological hooks that B2C people use. Yeah, just because B2B buyers are still buying B2C stuff and will be hooked by copywriting and brand and how you present yourself and tone of voice, so like all the marketing staples. Yeah, they're just humans as well. And you know what, at the end of the day, most people are actually quite nice people. So if you catch someone at the right time, at the right day, and you look like you've got a good proposition, and you say you'll do a 20-minute call and it is 20 minutes, they'll normally take that call.
Well, that leads me to the next question. If you could launch a consumer brand tomorrow, what would you launch and why?
Oh God, but this might be my next big idea that someone's going to steal. For a passion project, I don't know how good it is from a business point of view, is fragrance. So I make my own fragrance as like a hobby. And I love it, for starters. That's sort of my meditation. So when I started doing that as a hobby, I was instantly thinking, maybe I could do my own brand and stuff. My other half was like, can you just not turn everything into a business? Can you just enjoy this hobby for a hobby? But at the back of my head, there's some sort of personalization to do with fragrance, and how The Ordinary did with skincare, like made it very accessible from a price point of view with high ingredients, because they just use like plain bottles and don't do loads of marketing. I think you could do something like that with fragrance. The prices, and I buy expensive fragrance because I love it, but the prices of some of them are insane. So there must be something you can do there with personalization, making great fragrance more accessible. So probably in that space.
For those of you watching or listening, Nick does smell really good. So.
I did walk here though, so I don't know if my deodorant you're probably smelling.
Are you wearing your actual fragrance?
I'm not today, unfortunately.
You've made it, when you've got your own name brand fragrance like Britney or Christine.
Yeah, I don't think I would call it Nick.
Lady Gaga. Yeah. Well, Nick, look, if you do actually make the fragrance, we would love to make this video for you.
I'll let you know.
Have horses running in the beach. Very subtle, right?
Very subtle.
Yeah, there's some great fragrance brands out there. Have you heard of Commodity?
No.
They sort of switched it up. It's still an exuberantly overly expensive perfume, but their brand approach is insane.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Definitely bought into it. As you mentioned, you started out working at L'Oreal in sort of a marketing role. Over that time, up till now, you're in a founder position, you're in an investor position. What have been some processes or strategies you still carry with you that you learned from that time there that you implement into your daily sort of work process?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and actually something I preach a lot. So now being a founder is sort of like a sexy thing to do. So I think a lot of people sort of either don't go to university, great, or do go to university, great, and hop straight into wanting to be a founder, which I fully support. But I think the corporate world is looked upon negatively. And, somewhere like L'Oreal, I think you hear corporate and you think something like PwC or something like that. But for me, L'Oreal, was super fun, great creative minds there. And yes, has lots of bureaucracy and, you got to report to Paris for everything. But the things you learn if you open yourself up to it and just don't look at something as a job, are all the stuff I have taken with me. One of the big things is actually structuring a business. So, as marketing manager for Kerastars, which I was, one of their professional luxury brands, you're managing a 30 million, 40 million pound brand, you're managing the P&L, you're managing budgets, which, if you're a 22-year-old that's just left uni and you've never managed a P&L, you've never managed budgets, and we wonder why VCs throw $30 million at an idea with a founder who's 20, who's never run a business before, never managed a team, fails. That's not surprising because they don't know how to budget. Managing is another thing. So I was able to manage quite quickly at L'Oreal. I had some great bosses as well that I learned managing tips from. I think it's structure, managing your business like a business, not like a startup, and management were probably the three things I took to the startups.
Nick, I know this is a marketing focused podcast, but I've got to not ask you this in terms of if someone's listening out there and they've just finished uni and they want to get into the world of entrepreneurship or start their own business, would you recommend them to start at somewhere like L'Oreal to get themselves trained up? Or would you, now, entrepreneurship and starting a startup is so, it's the soup of the day, I guess. Or would you recommend them to go straight in, create a website and, create an MVP? What approach would you recommend someone?
It's twofold. Like I never want to stop a talented young person thinking they can't do something, because you can. You can create a startup with like no code tools like Bubble, Squarespace for your website, free plan on HubSpot for your CRM, free plan on MailChimp for your emails. Like you can get going very cheaply. Like you don't need necessarily money. So I always encourage that. But what I do say to younger people is if you're, what are you passionate about? And if it is the startup space, go and work for a startup. Don't go and work for L'Oreal or a corporate. Go and work for a startup. There's plenty of junior roles in a startup that you don't necessarily need experience for. Or go, if you want a bit more security, go and work for a scale up. So go looking on Crunchbase for people that have maybe raised a Series A. So there's a bit more security if you're worried about that. And just open your eyes to the startup world. Do your job great, but also ask the founder, I'm interested in this, and this. At Trumpet, a few of our hires were very honest and said, my vision in 5-6 years is to start a startup. That's great. Like, I don't expect you to be at Trumpet for 15 years. And those type of people will also say to me, do you mind if I see your investor update and how you update your investors or talk to your investors? And if there's not sensitive information, we will. But if they didn't have that mindset to ask, they would have just been doing their normal role. So want to actively encourage people just to get going, 100%. But also maybe say like, go and work in a startup for two or 3 years, learn from the founders there, learn the ropes. And I think you'll be a much more rounded person to then go and be a founder.
That's amazing. Having the experience of had 2 failed startups, having come in with no idea, reached, funding level, and then just having lost momentum, how would you advise someone to keep going or to look into other, avenues or potentially access certain types of resources?
Yeah, I think plateauing is one of the big reasons the companies fail. So like getting over that next hill, like getting early adopters is not easy, but it's doable. And then, becoming a serious business is one of the toughest parts of a startup. I think I always tell founders just to be really self-aware, and actually sometimes knowing when to quit is just as important to know when to keep going. And it's hard, but sometimes an idea just isn't the right one. So on the one hand, you need to be self-questioning all the time and they're the best decisions sometimes, because it can be really soul destroying if you're just trying to make something work. So sometimes it's like, I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to have a year break, go and work for someone else, not have that stress, and then go again. So be self-aware. The other part of self-awareness is being able to pivot your product. So at DesignMyNight, we pivoted to software. So we had the B2C brand that everyone knows, but actually our main business, why Access bought us, was our reservation software and ticketing software, which was SaaS, and they're a software house, Access. So we were very self-aware that, okay, we're building a tidy media business here with DesignMyNight. It was getting traction, great, but while on the outside it looks like it's all going great, we were like, is there a real big business here? And we were like, there's not. So we were self-aware about that and were really knew the industry we were working in, being sort of like nightlife, and discovered that the idea for a reservation platform for bars to start with was an opportunity. And we managed to pivot the business towards that. But that all came from us being self-aware of, is this going to be the business we want it to be?
Just quick follow-up from that, Nick. You mentioned grit and, kind of keep going no matter what. but also and these are quite subtle points in terms of sometimes you need to know when to stop. How would you advise someone who may be kind of going through this thing where they're like, I'm not sure if I'm in the right path? What advice would you give to them?
I mean, it's really difficult because, I think every business is very, very different. But you should know, like looking at your growth, looking at your pipeline, looking at your feedback, looking at your energy and your appetite to keep doing it. If all those things are a red cross, it's probably time to move on to something new.
And I think that's your it.
Yeah, I think heading towards wrapping up. It's all good. You did touch on this earlier, but are there any other books you'd recommend that are worth checking out or reading?
Top three.
Top three.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I'm actually really not a fan of like over theorizing stuff.
Yeah.
And I actually see a lot of founders that talk to me like they've read theory. And I'm like, well, the reality doesn't often match the theory. I prefer more to like inspire myself. So, I love, my favorite book of all time that's not fiction is Shoe Dog. So that's the story about Nike. If you haven't read that, it's a must read, even if you're not a founder. It's just a fascinating story as a piece of narrative about how Nike was built. So that is an unbelievable book. And the other one, which is a bit cliche, is I love the Steve Jobs book by I think Walter Isaacson, who's just done an Elon Musk book actually. I just like to sort of take myself, when I'm reading, for me that's sort of actually taking myself out a bit rather than theorizing. What I do though from a theory point of view is I'm very big on like reading Medium articles. So, like how did Slack do their product-led growth? How did Notion build from 0 to 1? So rather than reading like theory books, I'm very big on finding Medium or blog articles to give me, again, those sort of 3 or 4 tips that I can read quickly and be like, okay, I can apply those 2 things to Trumpet. Let's try it. So that's sort of how I like to work.
And are there any people that you follow on LinkedIn or on other platforms that, you resonate with?
There's so a guy called Will Alred who runs a company called Lavender, which is in sort of like the email space, who again, very great on actionable insights. I would say, go and look at what the Gong team do. From a B2C point of view, I love what the Gymshark team do. My co-founder Rory at Trumpet, if you're into sales, he's like a sales ninja. So, and we built his personal brand together, but from a sales point of view, because he just knows everything about sales. So Rory Sadler. They're probably the top ones.
Just going back to the previous question, Nick, you mentioned fiction books. Sorry, what are the top 3 fiction books that come to mind?
Oh God, you're really testing me here, aren't you? Top 3 fiction books that I've read. God, I haven't read any recently, unfortunately.
Fantasy, romance.
I'll tell you what I have read recently, which is a bit trashy, but again, I actually don't read, I do Audible because I never have the time to sit down and read. So like walking here for 40 minutes, I was listening to a book, is, what's he called? Thursday Murder Club.
Richard Osman.
I've never gone through a series so quickly. Yeah. It's trashy, but it's heartwarming. It's funny. I have absolutely loved them. And I was actually in South Bank Centre the other day having a meeting, and I saw a lady behind me had the new one. And I turned to her, I was like, I haven't started yet. How is it? We had like a 20-minute conversation about Thursday.
Have you got to that interesting bit? No giveaways, that kind of thing. Any other books that come to mind?
Not off the top of my head.
What?
One more question, son.
Oh, sorry. Yes. The one thing is, don't worry about the battery. Poor Natalie's trying
to keep you in time.
One thing is, I think it was Jeff Bezos who, in his A to Z Store book, recommends founders read a lot of fiction just to kind of get their head out of the way. And I spent a whole Christmas reading the Walter Isaacson, Steve Jobs book, and back to back was the Amazon HZ store. And it was like, really, there were lots of themes that came in. But the one thing that really helped me when I started reading more fiction was it helped me kind of join the dots in my head so much more effectively, and in a very, very different way, because you can make analogies and, you know, just off-field books just kind of really inspired me. So I kind of really understand what you're
think you've got like non-fiction. I think as a founder, it's important. My best ideas come when I'm not thinking about ideas. And people ask me, like, how do you ideate on your businesses and startup ideas? Never do I sit down and think, I need to come up with a startup idea. It often comes to me when I'm really not thinking about it. And I think when you're listening or reading fiction, that's a great way to activate the creative side of your brain, because obviously when you're reading or listening, you're creating this picture in your head. And also the great thing about fiction, I find, it's about constructing a narrative, and marketing and brand is all about the narrative. So, you know, whether it's tone of voice in the Richard Osman books and how he creates the different characters, you know, you can do the same. You can take points from all of that when you're creating your own brand.
Yeah, how to plot the perfect murder. I guess that's
and how to plot the perfect murder.
So going back into the world of marketing and SaaS tools, what are 3 SaaS tools that you cannot live without? You can go up to 5, but the first 3 that come to mind.
We'll do 3 because I'll be here all day otherwise. I think one I love to hate is Slack.
Yeah.
So hate maybe a bit of a strong word. But our whole team works on Slack. And what I don't like about Slack is the immediacy of it. So I think people expect you to reply immediately. I'm a purist, like I still love email. I think if you know how to manage your inbox properly, for me, everything's organized. I don't feel pressure. People know I'll get back to them when it's on my order of priority, whereas Slack is like, reply to me now. And if you haven't got back, there might be 7 comments by the time you've got back to it. But it is a great way to organize squads and huddles and chats and get stuff done quickly. Now in the huddles, you can like draw on the screen as well. So you're almost like whiteboarding. So I think as a communication tool, we love Slack. We live in HubSpot. So we're big HubSpot fans. For everything. So manage our sales pipeline, managing how we communicate with that pipeline. We do our marketing emails off that as well. And the other tool is another big one, but surprised me is Intercom. So I think people think obviously Intercom is like the help bot, but actually the more we've dug into that tool, like it helps us build our product tools without tech. So when you come into Trumpet, you know, it's like click here for this, click here for that. That's all done in Intercom. Banners within your product, like new launches, promotions, all done with Intercom. Because the great thing about Intercom is that little bot button is on every screen of your product. So then they're also collecting the data of who is in your product. So actually Intercom allows you to see who's logged in, when have they logged in, what pages have they visited, so you can track engagement of your users and then send them messages in product based on their engagement of your product. And I never knew it got that deep. I just thought it was the help bot. So I'm a huge fan of that.
Well, if anyone from Slack, Intercom or HubSpot
want me to sponsor them,
this podcast happens to be needing a sponsor, so please do get in touch. I think in terms of, this is my question that I added very, very last minute, because I knew that you would probably have some interesting ones too that you would give us. What are some podcasts that you listen to, may not have to necessarily be SaaS or marketing or tech related, that we should all be listening to?
This is a very, it's an answer that probably most of your listeners or watchers won't care about. And when I talk about switching off, so I'm a huge Spurs fan. So I actually listen to a lot of Spurs podcasts. So if I'm not listening to either non-fiction or fiction, actually podcast wise, it's actually Spurs ones.
Nick, you were doing so well. I'm Arsenal. And
oh God! I wouldn't have even come if I was like that.
You went. I remember once Sabs, when she had first started, you were in the box, and she happened to be sitting next to someone that who I can't remember. It was
this is terrible. I don't know.
Thierry Henry, I think.
Yeah,
it was.
I didn't know who it was.
She saw a picture of it in a magazine, and she's like, Suds, who's this guy? And I was like, and she's like, I was sitting next to him. And I was like, oh, what are the tips, or are there any tips that you'd give to, fellow founders or marketing professionals in terms of how to really switch off? Because, we live in a world where you have Slack, you have Instagram, you have WhatsApp, where the notifications are endless.
Yeah.
How do you discipline yourself to switch off and truly switch off?
So the only notification I have on my phone at all times is WhatsApp. So I don't have Slack notifications. I don't have Gmail notifications. So that's a big help. So what that does is it allows you to control when you're ready to look at stuff, rather than other people dictating to you when you need to look at stuff. And I see friends' phones that are just constant, and now it's linked to your watch, and I'm just like that. I just can't handle that. I work incredibly hard, so I know I will get back to everyone in a timely manner. Within my businesses, people know that if something's urgent, to probably WhatsApp me. So that's one tip. So turn off all notifications at all times, apart from WhatsApp. Walking is my other superpower. Like if I haven't got time to go to the gym or anything, I will always go for a walk. And I actually started that during lockdown, of course, and just loved it. So good for you. I put my phone in my pocket, so I'm not looking at my phone. I don't wear a smartwatch, and I will just put on a book or a podcast and just walk for 45 minutes. It's called almost like aimlessly walking. I'm not going anywhere. I live in central London, and so if I see a street I haven't seen, I'll just wander down it and just go for a wander. Head up, going for a wander, getting some exercise. So that I adore. And, people that hate the gym, everyone can go for a walk. Not everyone, but it's easier than going to the gym. And the final thing is breathing. So actually, whenever I feel a bit overwhelmed or stressed, I'll just close everything and just do 5, I think they're called box breaths. So long breath in, hold it, and then exhale it all out. Do that 5 times. Genuinely feel a lot calmer after that. It just slows everything down.
Do you do much other sort of meditating practices, or is that your go-to?
Yeah, I don't do any other sort of yoga or anything like that. They're sort of my meditative practices.
Sorry, Nick, to really rub this in, but did you have to do that after the Spurs game last week?
I do a lot of this season it's been okay actually, but after the Chelsea match I did a lot of deep breathing.
It's been lovely chatting to you. And just to round up, one final question. As you have roots in marketing, that's sort of where you started from. What advice would you give to anyone in marketing that's just looking to advance in their career or in general?
I think be open to learn. I think sort of self-teach. There's so many courses you can put yourself on. I always say I love when any of my team ask us to pay for a course. So, because I'm if you want to further yourself, that will help us as well. So always ask your employee. The worst they can say is no. What I was talking about, learning from other companies. So be inquisitive. If there's companies you admire for whatever reason, there'll probably be an article about how they've done it. So, if, for example, you love Nike or Gymshark or something, there will be blog articles about how they've done it. So for me, it's just having that hunger. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are lazy and just expect stuff to land in their lap. And I've never worked that way. I've always tried to better myself and learn from other people. And we live in a world now, whether it's podcasts or Audible or Medium or Substack, there's so much information, but you've just got to be asked to go and do it. And if you are passionate about marketing, it's about not just working 9 to 5, it's about educating yourself after your day job as well.
It's great. Thank you so much.